today the people in power should realize that they will love somebody who might die. It's a type of manager who does not trust his people and therefore wants to be involved in everything and takes everything on his shoulders. So every time there's a problem, he says, problem is the monkey, put it on my shoulder. It's incredible how many people you meet who have no hobbies. I mean, their hobby is their status. What car do I drive? How will people see me? Tô, está, como foi o fim de semana, foi ao restaurant, and then 5 times beijinhos, and then all my mails, end of the day, always answered. Always.
Olá, o meu nome é José Maria Pimentel, sejam muito bem-vindos ao 45 Graus. Como sempre, agradeço aos novos mecenas do podcast, a Mafalda, o Pedro Gonçalves, o Zé Sá, a Sónia Antunes, a Filomena Oliveira, o José Carlos Silva e, last but not least, Manuel Cunha Silva. Muito obrigado a todos. E agora, como este é um episódio com um convidado estrangeiro, vamos mudar para inglês. Até já! This episode's guest is Steven Braekeveldt, who served until November last year as the CEO of the Portuguese subsidiary of Ageas, a multinational insurance group, as well as CEO of Continental Europe Ageas. He has a quite impressive career, with degrees in law and economics, a teaching background, and decades of leadership roles across continents, from Hong Kong to Mexico, Singapore, Belgium, and lastly, Portugal. But what makes Steven a great guest for 45 Graus is much more than his professional achievements. His curious and passionate approach to life, both professional and personal. Despite a demanding career, Steven is a lifelong learner, a traveler, an art lover, and someone who reads, to my great envy, 60 to 90 books a year. And is also a published novelist. His first book was released in Portugal under the name O Homem que se faz esquecer. Steven's curiosity and rich life experience give him, as you will see, a unique perspective on almost any topic, ranging from the classics, leadership and organizational culture, sustainability, finding one's purpose in life, and even time management and practical tips on the correct way to manage our email inbox. And this is just a sample of what we discussed in this great conversation with Steven Braekeveldt. Let's go! Steven, welcome to 45 Graus.
Welcome of having me.
I don't do episodes in English that much. And one reason is because whenever I publish an episode in English, I lose about 1/3 of my audience.
Yeah.
Meaning like I have fewer people listening to the episode then. But I do some exceptions, and in this case it's worth it because, as I was telling you, many people along the past years suggested me that I invited you to the podcast, or that I at least meet you and say, oh, you should really invite this guy on. Which I found strange because I never, to be honest, like the first time, of course, I never heard your name before. You were until very recently the CEO of an insurance company, which is not the sexiest sector. So I was surprising, but then I thought I should do it. And then I read about your path and it made sense. So I guess we should start about your coming to Portugal. So throughout your career, you're born in Belgium, but you had an experience all over the world, Singapore, Hong Kong, Mexico. And then you ended up here. Like, how did that, very briefly, how did that happen?
But you're surprised that after these countries it gets to Portugal or what?
I didn't say I was surprised.
Well, I mean, it was actually quite easy. I was responsible in Ageas in the group for Europe. And then at a certain moment, the CEO of Portugal left for another company. So there was an empty seat. Yeah. We went through many names of the group. But none was withheld, and so the chairman, the CEO at that time, he said, "Well, Steven, I mean, you're in the board in Portugal already since 2007. You know everybody there. Why don't you take temporarily the job of CEO, and you do Europe out of Portugal?" I said, "Well, that's okay. I mean, let's do that." But from a temporary job, it came a job for 8.5 years, because when I arrived, and then I saw there was an acquisition on the left side, there was an expansion on the right side. And gradually, actually, our operations in Portugal grew quite well and became a quite important part of Portugal. And then they said, well, Steve, now you can stay in Portugal. So I stayed on in Portugal.
Yeah. What's interesting is that you've moved a lot throughout your career. So you typically have stayed for only a few years in any place. And here, where you were supposed to be only staying for as a transition phase, you ended up, I don't know, probably staying the longest.
Yeah, it's the longest period abroad that I stayed here. And why is that? Because I never worked one day here. It was fun. It was just fun every day. I mean, although I did long days it never felt like working because there was a vision, there was a mission, there was a strategy. There was also this changing the whole culture into a culture of a more humanized company where caring is important, where sustainability is important, where impact in society is important. All topics which, I have to tell you, when I arrived here and I talked about sustainability, most of the people thought it was a kind of new brand of clothing, or nobody talked about sustainability. Nobody. And so it was hard work in making all these moves. And nowadays, there is not one file that comes to the executive committee of Ageas of there's a part of sustainability in it. It's entrenched into the DNA of the group. So this whole change of culture was tremendous, fascinating. And coming back to your introduction, insurance...
I suspected you wanted to defend that.
Contrary to what people think, is one of the most sexiest part of the industries. And more young people come to the insurance. And why is that? Because let's take healthcare. We are on the brink of technology, of everything with healthcare. If it's implants, if it's progress of chronic diseases, anything that has to do with cancer, with everything, we have to follow technology to the letter. If it is Internet of Things for your house insurance, for your car insurance, everything is technology. And so people are surprised that it holds so much technology in it. Yeah, you have to follow everything which is progress in all sides of the business.
Let me do a bit, since you brought that up, devil's advocate on it. No, not that I'm doing it from the outside, because I myself worked in the financial sector, in the banking sector in particular. So I'm not criticizing from a higher position, as it were. But if you're doing like car insurance, how much do you need to know about that technology? So does it make a difference if the car is electrical or based on a combustion engine if it crashes?
Well, you would be surprised. I mean, firstly, car insurance, of course, is a mandatory product. So it's not a question that you have to do a big, hard sale because everybody has a car insurance. It's mandatory. But within a car insurance, take your window, your front window. This is not a window anymore. That's a computer. I mean, the technology in the window is fascinating. It's a computer you're replacing. Your car, I mean, if you go to a body shop, you don't see any person like in my young days with greasy, dirty, black hands and an overall which is full of dirt and oil. What is the first thing they do? They connect your car with a computer. They analyze your car with a computer. Every spare part is a computer thing. So within the insurance is one thing. It's insured. But then if you have a crash, what comes behind it is completely different than 20 years ago. You cannot even compare it anymore. A guy with greasy hands, he would not even know how to open it. So, no, honestly, I mean, so also there, technology, I mean, and then you have the lane assistance, you have the distance of the cars. It's all electronics in a car, everything.
And so if you work there, that's your point. So if you work there, you have to be constantly up to date to those changes.
Completely. Imagine today, when a child born today, most people will say average age will be 85, 86, and they will not be very... But actually, if you take into account scientific discoveries over 100 years, a baby born today will live 120 years. Because 100 years back, people died earlier. But then during those 100 years, there was a lot of the science had progress and people lived longer. And there will be, in 100 years, there will be genomics, there will be 3D printing of organs, there will be implants. So people will, by the scientific progress in itself, add 20, 30 years to life expectancy. So also there, insurers have to know very well how life will evolve. Because imagine if we insure somebody and he's short of 30 years, that's 30 years of poverty. So you really have to have an open mind to what's happening in the world.
Yeah, but you don't do that yet, right? So in your life, when you do life insurance...
You follow all that. You have to follow it.
No. My point is that in that particular case, you follow it, but you can't yet reflect that opinion into your mortality tables and whatnot. But you can anticipate that will happen. Yeah. Yes, I understand your point. Interesting. Yeah. And you mentioned the lack of sustainability on the agenda when you came. I found that interesting. So why do you think that is? Why do you think people were not even sort of aware of the issue?
Still not. Let's be very honest.
Yeah.
It has evolved a lot in very positive terms in Portugal. But still, for many enterprises and companies, it's definitely not number one. And in the end, if you want my personal opinion, anything which is sustainability is still today a luxury problem. nothing more than a luxury problem. It's not an urgent problem, because if it was an urgent problem, companies and organizations would at least commit 20-30% of their profits to sustainability or social impact funds or social investments that makes everything better. But it's not. It's all, I would call it still something on the website and something they deal with because they have to. Also, it's compliance, to be compliant, and also for sustainability indexes. But it's not an urgent problem today.
And why do you think that is, ultimately? So what's...
Because it's not. Most human beings have a short notion of time.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's why I was trying to get it. Yeah.
And when I tell people that my grandfather told me that his grandfather died in the last hunger epidemic in Belgium in 1845, I might be able to tell that to my grandchildren, who might tell that to their grandchildren. So we have a span of 350, 400 years. Just by my grandfather and me telling this, sustainability plays in 100 years. And what people do not realize is that today the people in power, because we're talking about today the people in power, should realize that they will love somebody who might die because of us not taking up this seriously. And I'm just telling the grandchildren's grandchildren. Mm-hmm. That's all. That's 100 years. So it's not so far. It's not so far. But we should not only do it for the grandchildren. We should first do it for us, our children, and every living being. Do I see urgency? Not at all. And this has to do with the second thing. So the first thing is timing. The second point is the rat in the wheel. Nothing is more easy for people to continue to do what they always have been doing. The rat in the wheel. It's difficult to stop the wheel. Mm-hmm. And so companies are focused on analyst reports, investors. Every 3 months we meet. What is the dividend growth? What is the return on target capital? These are terms that we're very comfortable with. And so nothing more easier than every 3 meets, meeting people and say, we hit our targets, we hit our KPIs. Yes, the planet is okay, but the planet, who cares? More plastic in the sea, or acidification of the ocean, of the nitrification of the ocean, or the fact that the 40 centimeters of soil of which the whole humankind is living off is being destroyed. Who cares about that? Nobody of the analysts are asking me what you're going to do about the soil or what you're doing about the microplastics and all the fish. So I don't care.
Yeah, we already have a full agenda comprised of the other stuff, right?
And so it's this rat race, which is very, I would say, people are at ease with it. It's very common. I'm in my comfort zone in that area. The rest, you need to get out of your current zone. And it calls upon courage. And not many people in business have courage to break this kind of rat in the wheel.
It's interesting, but both aspects you describe, they are about human nature and society ultimately. But they are generic. They don't apply specifically to Portugal. So what do you think?
No. When I arrived, it was like this. I would say that, of course, the more north you go, Scandinavia, for example, is much more advanced than that. Much more progress. Also, Holland is there. I wouldn't say that Belgium is so excellent in that. No way. You have some countries by culture who are closer with nature than others, and they're more advanced.
Interesting. You think it has to do with being close to nature? Interesting.
I think so, yeah. And how children, everybody has been educated in respect to nature.
It's interesting you say that. When I was hearing you, I was thinking more of an explanation around tendency to plan long term. You know that trade-off between the urgent and the important. Of course, the important that's the relevant stuff long term, such as sustainability. But sometimes the urgent goes on top of the important because it feels more urgent and you have to do it. And one thing I'm curious to know your perspective, because you work in Portugal now, or you worked in Portugal until very recently, but you have a long career abroad. And I think one challenge we face here many times institutionally is to plan long term. And sustainability is precisely one issue in which it requires a long-term perspective. Otherwise, you can't do it.
If I would compare cultures, every culture is beautiful. Honestly, let's start with that, right? I love to live in every country. And every country has its positives and its negatives. When I lived in Singapore and Hong Kong, for the 100,000s of operations we did a month, if there were 2 mistakes, it was a lot. And I had to kind of put a serious face because they came with a whole file indicating that it was loss of face for the department, for the manager, for the employee, and they were going to put it in this personal file. When I lived in Mexico, if we had 2 good operations out of 100,000, that was success. Okay, let's do it again. Okay, then you have 50,000. Let's do it again. How would I say? There's no proud of doing things correctly from the first time. It's it was like, okay, we're going to do it again. Okay. Portugal is not Singapore or Asia, but it's not Mexico either. But there is a kind of what you're saying, a lack of long-term planning. For example, my meetings are always planned within the next 12 months. And I know that my colleagues were always saying, how can you plan? We never plan more than 2 weeks meetings. I said, no. All my meetings are planned for 12 months ahead. So nobody can say they didn't know. It's in your agendas. It's strict. I don't surprise anybody. I am not like other Portuguese CEOs saying, I want to have a meeting. Come over, come up. Yeah, but I have a meeting. No.
Change your agenda. Yeah.
I need it. And so they have to start making a chaos because their meetings have to be replanned. All the others' meetings are planned. No, you don't do that. When I asked for meetings, I first said you have to look in your schedule if we can have a meeting. I'm not imposing. So it's about respect of the time of the others and also being ready that, okay, I would like to have a meeting. I will plan that 3 weeks ahead. So that's all okay. So that people can plan comfortably in order and that you don't upset agendas of nothing. So that it's very structured, disciplined way of working. Mm-hmm. This is something where I had many problems, or I saw many problems in Portugal.
But do you think it has to do, in that case, with a lack of long-term planning? So you mentioned that it's very customary for CEOs to just, out of the blue, set an agenda for the next day or the next week and disrupt everyone's agendas. Does that have to do with their lack of ability to plan long-term, or to an hierarchical structure which enables them to do that?
It is more to do with a very old-fashioned hierarchical structure that the CEO is all-powerful and his will is law and everybody should listen to what the CEO is saying, while I have a complete different opinion. The CEO for me is a conductor, and the ones who are playing is the people who have the orchestra, is the executive committee, the senior management, the management, all the people. The CEO is the chief ability, the guy who make the things work, who makes it possible that things work, and nothing else. He's not an executive. I never saw a chief executive officer. They don't execute, right? It's somebody who makes it. I always said I'm the chief emotional officer, the people who make things work, who plan, and then the composition, that's the strategy. So the composition, what everybody's playing, that's the strategy. And it's up to the CEO to make sure that the strategy is well put in place amongst all players of the orchestra. I think the Portuguese way of looking upon things is more of, I have to say, I am the authority and I'm the person saying things.
I'm the one who knows.
In a lot of cases, yes. I always have tried the kind of Hegel, thesis, antithesis, synthesis, right? You put something, you listen to what everybody has to say, and you come to a better decision by listening to all the arguments, and you come to the synthesis, which makes that also the final decision is carried by more than only one person.
It's interesting you say that, because it's very hard for a decision to be completely right from the onset.
Never.
It's almost impossible.
Yeah.
So you have to have a way to iterate, which is another word for what you for the Hegelian approach, right? So.
And what I see today is that the big struggle that is going to happen in the coming years, and some will go and some will not go, is to move from output to outcome. Mm-hmm. Most CEOs, most companies are focused on output. KPIs on growth of earnings, growth of income, growth of profit, KPIs on return, etc.
So what you can measure more easily.
Yes, output. The outcome, what they want to do, what the impact is for society, why you do it, the why you do something is still not there. They're just the rat in the wheel again.
Again, yeah.
And that's not why oikonomia, in the old term, was how you make sure that everybody has access to goods. This has changed. So you have to go back to the outcomes. Why do we do all that? Why do we work from morning till evenings? Is it only to have a salary, or has economy, companies, a meaning? Has it a purpose in society? And that's something which is most of the companies are not looking at yet.
Yeah, it's in a sense a bit the urgent versus important dichotomy again. Let me go back to the hierarchy discussion. Whenever you have a common diagnosis, but things still don't change, it means that there's a deeper cause it's preventing it from change. And this is why I'm interested in your perspective, because you came from the outside. Whenever I speak to people in management positions about that, and they say, oh, you should delegate more, you should, have that profile you just described, what they'll tell me is that, yeah, ideally I should, but I can't trust people under me. Like, they don't have the right knowledge. If I'm not there seeing, or if I'm not intervening, they won't do it. And sometimes these people might be right, to the sense that we still have a very, in some parts, an unskilled labor force. So people might not have university degrees, or they might have, but they not have the right experience. So in some cases, it's very hard for me to persuade people that are having this conversation against that, because last time I did that, and then they just ruined the decision. So if I take my hand out of the leash, as it were, it doesn't work. But with you, apparently it works. So it means that this is wrong.
Well, I always had the kind of term of garbage manager in front of me. The ones you probably know, the one who takes the monkey on the shoulder. It's a type of manager who does not trust his people and therefore wants to be involved in everything and takes everything on his shoulder. So every time there's a problem, he says, problem is the monkey, put it on my shoulder. And so in the end, he gets shoulders full of monkeys, which is, if there's garbage, give it to me, I will solve it because I know. Which is completely wrong, of course. Because what happens is that you create stress all over the company. Because he has a monkey, he will not keep his monkeys on his shoulders. He will put the monkey somewhere else, on another one's shoulder. But they're not paid to do that. So, as they're not paid to do that, but yeah, I mean, the hierarchy is saying to do it. So everybody gets overweighted with what they have to do. I believe that the CEO, somebody at high level, only has one task. It's to squeeze the person like a lemon in potential. I believe the task from everybody is to elevate people in their potential. Sometimes people do not want, and you have to respect that. People say, I have imbalance, I have little children, I don't want, it's not my timing yet. Fine, no problem. But it's detecting the potential in people. If, like you say, this person is surrounded by unskilled persons, number one, he should try to elevate them. If that is not possible, he has to remove them. Change the people or change the people. That's a slogan which is very, change the people or change the people. Because you cannot continue to work with people who do not have potential. For example, myself, I know I'm a very chaotic person. I'm an artistic person. I'm probably more a poet than, let's say, a pure numerical guy, while I was 10 years a trader. So I only had figures. I have dealt with figures for years. But in the end, I have a more artistic mind. So I know I have to surround me with people who are extremely structured and very disciplined. And everybody knows that. I never keep my emails. I delete all my mails. Can you imagine? Because I know myself. I mean, my assistant, she is always laughing at me. I never find an email back. Never. But I know, but if I need something, I tell her, 4 years ago, that guy sent me a mail once. Can you find that back? She finds it back. So the person, you have to surround yourself with people of which you definitely do not have the talents, where they're complementary to you. And I'm sorry to say so, but if there's no trust, come on. That's the basic.
Yeah, it's a trust issue.
ABC of having teams is having trust. Everywhere where I arrived, I always worked with the people who were in the company. Unless I saw they were not skilled. Even if I tried, second chances, etc. But you roll with the reams, with what you have. Mm-hmm.
And in the end, they might surprise you. Also because it's an iterative process again. Yeah. So it might take some time, but people surprise you.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an issue of trust. And then it has a perverse effect. I don't know if you've come across this, if you had this experience, but when you work in an hierarchical structure, that's an equilibrium that's in a sense useful for both sides. So it's useful for the person on top because that person has a lot of power. But for the people underneath, it also removes responsibility from them. So they say, there's a problem. Oh, this is not my problem. Yeah. That guy is being paid a lot. Yeah. You should do it. It's not me, right? Which is perverse in its own way. Yeah. And then you have, like, say, you have a town hall. People are supposed to speak up. Why will I speak up? Like, they should know. They are paid a lot. They should know. I don't need to say it.
But that's actually the culture that when I arrived, we changed a lot. I always spoke half an hour with all the newcomers in the company. That's a lot of time, I can tell you. But people is the only thing we have in a company. I mean, walls, computers, phones, that's all replaceable. But your culture in a company is made by people. And so every newcomer had half an hour with me, not to talk about business, but what makes your heart tick? What makes you passionate? And mostly I always asked, what's your purpose on earth? Why are you on earth? Why? And that's important, I believe, because if my purpose would be to save the frogs in Serra de Estrela, for example, imagine that this is my purpose. I want to save the frogs in Serra de Estrela, and I'm going to work for Ageas, an insurance company. Sooner or later, I will have a problem, because my personal purpose in life, I mean, it's very far away of what I spend 10 hours or 8 hours a day in. So somehow I ask this every time to all the people, because to be sure that purpose, why are you on earth? You know that there are two important moments in life. The moment you're born and the moment you know why you're born. That's purpose. And so if you can work in a company that one way or another is kind of fulfilling your purpose, that's a much easier place to work in. And that's why I tell people, if you don't like the strategy, move on. Move on. This was something new in the company when I told that. When I told people, if you don't feel comfortable with our strategy, move on. Life is too short. You have to have fun in life. There will be some other companies where you have fun. Have fun in life.
Yeah, it's normal. You go out and you get in again. And what's your purpose? What's your answer to that?
Impact. And I have been a very lucky person, very lucky man, that being the CEO, I could have impact. Firstly, and now, I mean, I'm gone since, not CEO since a month anymore. And now is the transition period where I have to look how I'm going to move from an institutional position, because a CEO in the end is a kind of institution. You don't misuse it. That's not what I'm saying. But it's still an institution which gives you power to have impact in society. So I'm in this transition phase where I have to move from how do I have impact in society from a CEO level to having impact as just little Stephen in the world. How can I do that? So to continue my purpose, having impact, but not from an institutional level, but from a personal little Stephen, just an individual like anybody else who have to have impact in society.
I was going to say lucky is not the right word, but you are in a good position in the sense that you've built some of that before you left office, right? So you've published books, you have more books on the way, as far as I know. So you've started building the new edifice before you left the previous one, right?
But that's necessary because you have to, statistically in life insurance, there's a big peak 2 years after retirement. A lot of men die.
Especially men.
Yes, especially men. Because they're workaholic, because they're addicted to their jobs, they don't have any hobbies, they work, and then they fall into a black gap, and that has impacts in their body, in their chemistry of their body, in the mental health and everything. And you always have a peak, like 2 years, people dying 2 years after their retirement. So it's important, and again, companies are not putting enough effort in how do you move for somebody who has been working 35, 40 years towards a period of that he is not working anymore, or it's something that society has not dealt very well with. How to prepare all that,
which is a puzzle because it's so obvious.
But still, it's incredible.
But it's true. It's absolutely true. But it's such an obvious problem that it still puzzles me.
Yeah, but it's incredible how many people you meet who have no hobbies. I mean, their hobby is their status. What car do I drive? How will people see me? Etc., etc. It's incredible how many people have no other interests or know how to fill their days.
Why do you think that is? Because that's, again, sort of planning long-term, right? Yeah. So your hobbies are your... Actually, I was having lunch with a cousin of mine, and we were having a very similar conversation. And he's almost 50. Still far from retiring, but already kind of within sight.
Yeah.
And he was saying, well, I'm trying to diversify my hobbies so that
But it's important.
Yeah, but not many people do that.
No.
And why?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that if I listen to your cousin, that he is well-read, that he knows what that being interested in so many things is important for the brain, for mental health, for everything, and also it is what gives you pleasure. I mean, nobody is going to thank you because you worked 35 years in a company or something. I mean, it's not, you have your salary, you were paid for it, and it's not where you should have your sole pleasure from. There's so many other things in life that people should be doing. That's, for example, why when I arrived here in Portugal, it was still, the company, they were still doing paintball, bowling for team
building.
Yeah. And I said, no way, this is going to stop. Every team building must have a social impact. And so what we do see after so many years having that, so we are helping nursing homes, all kinds of things that we are helping society with organizations who have no money. But what we do see is that the percentage of people, of our employees, who are now active in helping NGOs has increased percentage. Because for many people, it's not easy to talk or to make that step to meet poor people.
Mm-hmm.
They're afraid this step is difficult.
Of course, yeah.
It's difficult to meet poor people if you want to meet poor.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you can do, but it's not
No,
easy.
absolutely. Like in theory, you would like, but
Yes,
then...
but it's not easy.
Yeah.
And so by having this now in place for many years, we increased a lot the percentage of people who now, in their free time, help NGOs because they see through having gone through many of these exercises, but actually it's not that difficult. It's not that difficult to help people, to help NGOs, to be there. And so again, indirectly as a company, you live the values and you give something back to society.
Interesting. And you're kind of nudging people towards that direction. And if it's not within their motivation, they won't do it. But if it is and they just need a nudge, that's curious because I never thought of it. But yeah, it's kind of stupid that team buildings are usually around those things which are fun but kind of inconsequential, right? Like if the paintball and so on, like they are fun, they might be good to build team spirit. In some cases, they are not even good for that purpose, but sometimes they are. But they are inconsequential, like they are pleasurable, but they don't have any impact.
But you know how much fun we have in having the last...
Yeah, it's not really a trade-off, right? It's just
the week before I left, the people who reported to me, we went in painting a boxing area in the poorest quarter of Lisbon. For 30 years, nobody touched it. It was dirty, dusty, black, everything. We put it anew. You know how much pleasure we had by painting all together, we're doing these things. So you can have a lot of fun and still have being consequential for society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just a mindset. The mindset is everything. It lets me think to when COVID started. I had two options. So there were no cars on the road. So there were no accidents. So we could have said, okay, we're going to lay off all these people temporarily because the law foresaw it. But we changed our company into a textile company. You're saying a boring company? So I called the chairwoman of the hotel association. I said, do you have sheets too much in your hotels? I said, yeah, I can look for it. Okay, I said, if you have, let the hotels deliver the sheets to Ageas. Then I called the CEO of a sewing company. I said, would you be willing to sell your sewing machines at cost for this purpose to make mouth masks? And he said, yes. Because nobody had mouth masks at the beginning of the nursing homes. Nobody had mouth masks. And so we had the teams of our Ageas Repara, who is doing the leakage detection. They could not go to the home, so they didn't have work either. And they were working in our garages to make packages to our employees. And they, after a while, we were making 3,000 mouth masks.
Who was making the masks?
Our employees.
But did they know how to do it?
There was an instruction how to do it.
It was not that difficult. Okay.
No, it's not that difficult, right? And so you see, there's always purpose. And so instead of having nothing to do, actually, many of our employees had a purpose. They were helping society because on the news, it was the whole time, no mouth masks, we cannot buy them, etc., etc. So we were delivering mouth masks with our car to nursing homes, hospitals, etc., etc. So every crisis gives you opportunities to do some, but you have to think differently.
Yes, exactly. Contribua para a continuidade e crescimento deste projeto no site 45grauspodcast.com. Selecione a opção Apoiar para ver como contribuir, diretamente ou através do Patreon, bem como os benefícios associados a cada modalidade. It's so commonplace to say that nowadays, what you just said, that the crisis is an opportunity, but still it's something that I feel that is not often fulfilled because it is true. Like whenever something changes, it might have bad consequences, but there are almost always good things that you can take out of it.
Always.
Even we know in our lives, like let's say you missed the train. Like,
yeah.
Oh shit, I missed the train. But if you think about it, might be something good that you can take out of it. Maybe you can read that book that you have been putting off for so long or whatever.
Well, It's good that you mentioned that because, I always try to read since many years between 60 and 90 books a year. And that comes also because I change what other people call boring times into quality time. I am never angry that the plane is too late, that the train is too late. I always carry a book, always, wherever I go. Even if I have to wait 3 minutes, I will be reading a book. And you change also, again, it's a mental shift in making something where people get so annoyed and angry towards quality time. I'm thinking, the plane is 1 hour late. Great! 1 hour of reading. I don't have that much time to read 1 hour extra, so 1 hour extra
Amazing,
reading.
right?
Fantastic.
Yeah, I do the same. That's actually a big part of the reason I started listening to podcasts back in, 2007, so a long time ago. And then eventually I ended up doing a podcast myself. Do you listen to podcasts?
Not enough.
There you go.
I'm your age bracket.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
I have...
But there's a trade-off. If you read so many books...
Yeah, but they're very interesting podcasts. Yeah. They're very interesting ones. I listen to some, not enough, because there's a lot of knowledge out there and very good speakers. And I should discipline me more to listen, more to podcasts, because they're very good ones.
And it's something that you can do in some situations in which you're not able to read, like, walking or and whatnot. I have a very similar approach to this type of situations. And for instance, when I'm in traffic, this again applies to podcasts, not to books specifically, but when you're stuck in traffic, if I'm listening to a podcast, I don't really care so much, unless I really need to be, I need to pick my daughters from school. Then of course it's not good. But otherwise, I don't really care too much. So I have that approach. But there's one challenge I find myself, and I would imagine you find it even more, which has not to do with time per se, but I'm not sure what's the right expression in English for this, but I would say in Portuguese, mental space. So let's say you have a demanding job, which means that you not only have to do, but you have to think and to plan ahead and to strategize and reflect and decide. And that means that when you stop, when you have time, your brain will start automatically thinking about those important things that you have to decide on. And so even if you start reading a book, that effect, like you start on the first page and then half page through, your mind just wanders to something else because you have important stuff on your mind. And that's what I'm really curious about. Like, how can you manage that? How can you stave off that?
Again, I was lucky to start, I'm talking about the 80s now. I was a trader. So I started in banking like you, but then I saw the light. I went into insurance, right? So, but I started as a trader in derivatives and foreign exchange. And these are the days where you were still, those old movies where you were 3 phones on the head, shouting all over the place. You needed to have 3 conversations at the same time. So you had to be very concentrated, and with click phones, etc., you could switch from one customer to another, but you were actually continuously talking 3 conversations at the same time, 3 quotes, selling, buying with 3 customers, 4 customers, continuously, which means that I have learned then to kind of switch my brain very rapidly and be immediately concentrated. And that's what I believe still today somehow is trained in my head. That's why even 3 minutes I have to wait. I start reading, I'm reading. I am completely concentrated on my reading. If I'm working, I am concentrated on my working. Completely concentrated on my working. And probably that dates back from those 10 years being so trained in you have to do something, shoof, you're concentrated on that thing.
Interesting, but let me pressure you a bit on that, because I would buy that completely from a very, engineer type of person, very structured, very, typical person who puts things in
and you
different
think I'm
boxes.
not.
No, I think you're a creative type of person.
Yes.
This is a compliment, by the way. Actually, it's not. It's neither a compliment nor a criticism. It's just a correct criticism of yours, of which I already had the impression, and you said it, I don't know, half an hour ago or something. And creativity comes from those empty spaces, right? So creativity comes from what your brain is doing when you're kind of wandering off and not thinking about something. And that means that the price to pay for creativity usually is not being able to focus so much in such a narrow sense on a task. But apparently you're able to kind of square the circle here, which I'm surprised. I'm sort of jealous.
I started off as a pure left brain guy. 10 years trading, it's only numbers. And then being in Hong Kong and Singapore as a CEO of a bank. So, it's only figures, numbers. So somehow my left brain has been trained a lot. But at the same time, I was a huge reader, writer. I have been singing on stage. and still love to sing. This evening, I'm going to have dinner with a singer, a Belgian singer. And I told him, when can we sing again together on stage once? Because I love to sing on stage. And so let's see what we can do. And so I have always had this kind of tendency also for artistic things, which is the right brain. Mm-hmm. When I arrived here in Singapore, we started with Ageas, the Singularity University. We brought Singularity University here with Beta E, with Cascais, Community of Cascais. And that's the left brain concentration, purely of technology. And then we partnered with the House of Beautiful Business. Why? Because Singularity University is great. It gives you a view where the world is going from a more engineering side. But it doesn't give you satisfaction of why we're doing things and how we're doing things. And so we partnered with the House of Beautiful Business because it is more concentrated on the right brain and how are human interactions, what do you do, how you organize it. And so it's always this kind of balance between both brains, which is very important. I don't know if I answered your question. Probably not.
I was thinking if you have. I don't think you have, but I'm not sure there's an answer. So it's just the way you are. Like you're able to, and that's good. You're able to kind of having it both ways.
Yeah,
which is great.
I know my colleagues sometimes told me, Stephen, stop with all these ideas. I said, no, this is not my task. My task is to give you so many ideas. It's up to you to tell me if you can take it up or not, or if there's money in it or not. But I will continue to push.
How and when do they come to you?
The whole time.
But not when you're reading?
No.
Nor when you're working?
Well, sometimes. Because you meet people. And so sometimes, even if you're working, you meet people and you catch something and you say, that's a characteristic I need to keep and give to one of my personalities in my book. So you always can see things in people.
So I'm trying to square those two facts, that creativity works in that way and the fact that you're able to, like at 100% in each time. So maybe what's happening, and that's interesting, is that the ideas are kind of piling up in your subconscious when you're, say, reading, and then they come up later on, but all at the same time, as it were.
I wouldn't say at the same time, but probably, a lot is being stored. Uh-huh. And then sometimes I start laughing because I have such a crazy idea that I'm thinking, this is so crazy. For example, now my second book is published in Belgium. I had to reread it. And I was actually laughing with my own stories.
That's good.
I never knew that what I was writing down, actually. This was... And I'm thinking, where the hell did you get that idea? Because, of course, this is written a long time ago, before it goes to publishing, etc. And then you start reading, saying, where did I get that idea? It's incredible.
Not only do you read a lot, but you have a wide net, so you read about different topics. Yeah. You know the reason behind the name for this podcast? It's called 45 graus, meaning 44 degree in the sense of the angle. And it kind of symbolizes the intersection between different topics. Because I feel that a lot of times what happens is that if you're curious about different things and you read about different topics, sometimes topic A will give you an idea to solve an issue on topic B or to form an opinion.
Completely.
And that's fascinating. Yeah. And it's the whole purpose of this podcast is to try and find that.
Young people ask me a lot of times, what should I do to have a career? And I'm telling them, you should go to heavy metal concerts. And then they're all looking at me like, this guy is not very good in the head. And I'm saying, yeah, you should go to heavy metal concerts. You should go to ballet. You should go to classical music. You should go to musea. Look at contemporary art, but also art from the Middle Ages. You should read about astrology, anthropology. You should read history. You should know why bees are flying the way they fly. You should know why ants are walking on a line. You should read about everything and do everything. And I'm telling them, why do I say that to have a career? Because now I'm, of course, at the end of my career. It's when I meet or have M&A deals to do, merger and acquisitions with other CEOs, we talk 20 minutes about the topic. No more. You go straight into the topics and you discuss it. And for 1 hour and a half, you try to connect with the person. What makes him tick? What is interesting to him? So that you can feel that there's a connection. Because in the end, what you want is that when you call, he picks up the phone or she picks up the phone. Mm. That said, this guy was an interesting guy, or I had a good connection with the guy. He's trustworthy, he is transparent, he knows what he wants, he's very open. So that's it. That's what you're looking for, is that pick up the phone. And for that, if you have somebody in front of you who is a huge collector of little teaspoons, well, you must be able to talk about collecting teaspoons or whatever. And you need a knowledge which is extremely broad from, you might have a CEO who is very interested in heavy metal, somebody else in ballet, somebody else in ants or in bees or whatever.
That's why I find doing this podcast has been very useful for having a wide range of topics you're at least moderately acquainted with whenever you have a discussion with someone.
Must be fascinating for you.
First of all, it's motivating because it's fascinating for me.
So
but
you're
that's
actually doing this podcast for egoistic reasons. Yeah. That's the point, right?
There you go. I always say that. Actually, that's the trick, right? Is to find a balance between something which has an impact and you like, right? So
and to have joy in the
exactly,
work.
Yeah. But in the end, obviously, the core is always egotistical in the sense that you're doing something like. But to go back to your approach, so your approach is to first, whenever you meet someone, is to first take care of the topic and then meet the person. Or do you do kind of a bit of a small talk and then put the topic in the middle, or put it towards the end?
No, I'm quite direct. You get what you see and you see what you get. I will not go talking about your weekend. I mean, it's also a topic which is typically cultural Portuguese when they have the fonto, está, welkom voor fim de semana, for a restaurant. I mean, nobody can, it's not a habit that you can start with a topic. There's the whole, the norms of introduction that you have to know how it went, and with the father and the mother and the aunt and the children, and then they come to the topic. And then ending, you cannot end. You cannot say bye. No, you have to end in a certain way, and then 5 times beijinhos, and then so you see this. But I'm quite straight and direct. What?
Yeah, the ending is very puzzling, even to me.
I never receive phone calls. Well, never is not true, but I want to stress why. And I don't receive that many mails. So people always ask me all my life, how come you have so much time? And I told from the beginning, also when I arrived in Portugal, when I received many mails. And I told people, I know you're paid. I know you're working. And I trust you. And I trust that all people do well and try to do the best they can. But I don't need to know that. You don't need to send me mails to tell me, hey, Steven, do you know I'm working on this project? And then they put you in CC.
Yeah.
Right? I said, so from the start on, I mentioned to everybody, when I'm in CC, don't send it to me because it's not for me. It's just for me to know that you're working. But don't be afraid. I know you're working. So after a while, all these mails fell away. And then I said, everybody can mail me if you need me. If you need me, I'm there. That's what I'm paid for. But not to read. So that limits the amount of interesting mails I need to read. And everybody's saying, I'm overloaded, I have too many mails. All my mails, end of the day, always answered. Always. Never one delay. Always answered.
So how do you answer emails that you need some time to reflect on? So you answer saying, I need time to reflect on this?
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's something what people do not do.
Yeah, exactly. I try to do it.
That annoys me.
Yeah.
Because you don't know, have they read it? Or they're aware of it? No, I will always answer, let me come back to you. Or if I don't know immediately answer, I will think about it or something. But people will know that I've read it. Secondly, I told people, because here I come with the plane, everybody is already on the phone, talk, stop, and then I'm telling people, don't call me for just the call. You can all call me if you need me. If you need me, you can call me. But for the rest, you're accountable. You're responsible, not me. You're responsible. Only if you're in doubt, or if you think, I would love to have Steven's opinion on that, you can call me. You cannot imagine how much time that saves you.
I can imagine, actually. I can imagine.
And that's what allows me as CEO probably to be more than 60% busy with people. Because it's a people's business.
Yeah, that's where actually can make a difference, not the...
That's where you make a difference.
Well, I don't need to persuade you of this, but I was thinking when I was hearing you, the people that email you are probably people with whom you have regular meetings anyway. So, I don't know, weekly or bi-weekly. So for them to need to email you before that meeting, it needs to be really something important.
Yes.
Like an emergency or something.
And that happens.
Yeah, and that happens, of course. But there you go. Yeah.
And holidays, weekends, all my mails are answered, always. Because I find it, some people agree with me and some not. But I think as a CEO, you have a responsibility. You're also paid for it. And it's not because you're on holiday, you can say, but I'm on holiday. No, you have a responsibility because your company is more than just you have a responsibility to bring food on the table for more than 1,000 people. That is where it's about. I mean, there's people behind and they're working to get food on the table, to get their bills paid at the end of the month. Imagine you don't take that seriously, even in the weekends. You're playing with the future of the company and of people's jobs. And so this is always the responsibility that you have. It's a responsibility towards the people who are earning money and who need that money to send their children to school, to buy shoes, to have bacalhau on the table, that's important.
It's almost an ethical thing. I don't think we have developed for email specifically, but also for other organizational issues. We haven't developed yet those norms society-wide. So you do it that way, and I agree it makes sense. But there's not yet a norm. Like, for instance, what you just mentioned, the reply to the email thing. It's funny because I've tried to implement that myself. So whenever I cannot reply, I say, this is a long email, so I might take some time, but I've read it. Yeah. But back, I don't know, even months ago, I didn't do that. What I did was I saw it, I would think I need to read it with more time. And then sometimes I would take 2 months to reply back, which is not even polite, right?
No. It's out of respect. And also it's also good for the mental position of the one who sent you the mail. He knows you're busy.
Exactly, yeah.
And he knows that you will come back when you are ready to come back on it. Mm-hmm. So that's important.
Exactly. It's a sign of respect.
It's hygiene also. It's a hygienic thing for me.
And that's a big part of the reason why you have to be well rested enough to be able to read or to, engage in whatever other form of creativity and of curiosity. I don't feel this very much myself, I should say, because I'm really a very curious person. But many people say, and you probably have heard this, that, I'd love to read more. But when I arrive home, I'm so tired. My brain is it's twisted and it's not even working anymore. So all I can do is turn on TV and watch some crap. And I can understand why people say that, because if you have a very demanding job and you have to, be all day long doing that, then it's tough when you arrive home to have the will, to have the motivation to read.
But I could not sleep without reading. That's the difference.
So you are the...
I need to read.
Bedside table...
No, I only have one. I always read one book at a time. But I always have 60 books waiting.
But on your bedside table?
No, in the office. I have it in my apartment, a kind of office, and they're there.
So you read before bed, not in bed?
In bed as well, but not that much, because that's not that good for health, in bed.
Probably not.
In bed reading and in bed looking at screens is quite negative for sleep. So normally I read before going to bed.
So what's your habit? You have dinner, and then half an hour later or something, you take to the couch and you.
Well, I always follow news, so I need to know what's going on in the world. That's for sure, and then I will read.
Interesting.
I put up some candles and read.
And you have like a fixed slot of time to read?
No, because when I was working, normally mostly every evening you have a dinner, and so you come home at 10. So you read until 11, and then you go to sleep. So,
still, you have to be organized. There's not too much time to do that.
Yeah, but still, it goes.
Yeah.
It goes.
Well, Steven, it was a great conversation. Before we go to your book, is there anything you wanted to say I didn't ask?
There's so many things, your relationship with nature, your relationship with philosophy, your relationship with... there's so many things you could... that you can go into. So
that's interesting. I didn't ask that because you started when you were at university. I think you worked with the World Wide Fund, right?
Yeah, I was a nature guide, World Wildlife Fund. I was also looking at Telluric radiations with the radiesthesia and everything, and how to avoid that little children pee in bed. Because it has a lot to do with radiestic, with the Telluric. All these kind of things I was very active in. Yeah.
No. Now you caught my curiosity. The children peeing in bed thing.
Well, people are quite far away from Earth, from nature. And I should go back. Why did the Romans send sheep to build their airways, right? The roads they built. So they always sent herds of sheep ahead. Why did they do that? Because sheep eat a certain kind of plants. They prefer certain plants which are growing on rocky underground, where actually the radiation is the furthest away. So you know that the Earth gives a kind of radiation every 2 meters, 3 meters. And so these sheep, they walk, and then they put these, when 2 or 3 kinds of herds come by, and they all go the same way, that's where they put the sticks, so that they are on a rocky underground. When you go to a garden and you see kind of dens at the garden, you will always see that there is one low den, and then 3 or 4 same, a low one. Look at it, standing on one of the radiations. Okay, so there's many things that you can see which people don't see anymore. When in the old days, I don't know if it was the same in Portugal, but in Belgium, when there was a new farmhouse, they let the dog sleep for 3 days alone in the farmhouse. And the dog would normally always going to sleep in the same place. That was the bedroom, because the dogs feel automatically where you would sleep best. So then became the bedroom. How many parents or you meet that they're saying, it's strange. I put my baby always like this in bed, and in the morning it's completely reverse, or it is always diagonally in the bed. Children, small babies, they feel this. They move away from radiations. They move away while they sleep to a place where they can release energy instead of getting energy. But that's all lost, okay? And so in those days, when we had people who asked me to go, for example, babies peeing in bed, it's mostly what you found out. It can be sick diseases and sickness. I'm not excluding that. But in a lot of cases, it was because the bed was standing. Because the bedrooms are made now in apartments, you cannot choose. That's the block. There's 2 apartments, 2 bedrooms.
Sure.
You have no choice.
A way to test that is if the child didn't pee in bed when he or she was sleeping elsewhere.
For example. And so what you then do is moving the cot in a place where you think it's better to sleep there than in that place, because next to the telluric radiations, you also have the underground rivers, which give a lot of energy. Anyway, this is a completely different topic, but there's so many topics.
You're full of surprises.
Well, I could continue for hours, I think.
No, you caught my curiosity, so I already wrote it down to check it out later.
Oh, well, you can check.
No, especially because I'm just facing that very issue with one of my daughters. So.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So I'll check it out. Yeah.
Check it out.
I'll check it out. It might have to do with that. And speaking of surprises, the book you are going to recommend is also a surprise, at least to me, because you mentioned the author before we began, and
Well, it's a book I still recommend. I have read it like 6 or 7 times. And once in a while I read it over. It's a book which is completely forgotten now. It's from Martin Gray. Au nom de tous les miens. I read it in English, but for those I loved in English. And Martin Gray is a little boy who is living in Poland, in Varsovia. And then, of course, you have the Second World War. He's Jewish, and he is caught. And so they have to move into the ghetto. And he is full of energy, and he puts up whole gangs to smuggle bread into the ghetto and make money, etc. I mean, he does all these kind of things. Yeah, he loses, of course, all his family is killed. And then he escapes from the ghetto, and he becomes part of the Russian, the Partisanen, who are going against the Germans. Then for 2 years after the Second World War. But you should read that part, is quite impacting as well, his times at the ghetto. And then he's moved to the concentration camp. He escapes concentration camp, and then he's with the Partisanen to chase the Nazis to discover them. And then he moves to New York, where a great aunt is living, and he works like hell. I mean, he feels like, I lost all that time, and he works. Work is the only thing to not remember all the atrocities. He works like hell to forget that he lost his brothers, sisters, parents, uncles. He works. He becomes rich, and then he finds his spouse. They have 3 or 4 children. That I don't know anymore, but at a certain moment he stops working, buys a big house in France, in the south of France. And then while he is traveling, there's a wildfire, and the house with his wife and 4 children are dead. And his first reaction is, I have to marry again. I have to have children, because it's important to live on, that they know about it, What I want to say is, this is a guy, you read that book, the guy went through so much, and his end, even when he's older, his first thing, this lust of life. I have to live. I have to continue to live through my children. They have to know what my parents were like, because otherwise I have nobody to tell. And still today, I give this book from time to time to people who have a burnout, who are in depression, and I'm telling them, if they can read it, because in a lot of cases they cannot concentrate that much, but if they can read it, I give that because it puts the kind of problems they have versus the problems
in perspective. Yeah.
In perspective, it puts these problems in perspective. And it shows that hunger for life, that animal that is so eager to live, to discover, to experience, to do different things. Incredible. But the book is forgotten. It's already a long time out of any list. But it's a book I read very early on. It had impact in my life. But from a literary point of view, it's rubbish, eh? This will never win the Nobel Prize. This will never win.
Well, probably not rubbish, but...
No, yeah. But from a literary point of view, that's not...
I understand, yeah.
But it's the content which is so important in that book.
It kind of connects beautifully to what we were talking about in the very beginning of our conversation, the issue about sustainability and you being able to not only think of the present, but also your grandchildren, which was, as you described a bit, also in his mind. So that whole willingness to fulfill life, to take advantage of life, also has to do with those that come after you.
Yeah.
Right? Even those that are not born yet.
Yeah.
But that will be your family. Yeah. Great, Stephen. It was a great conversation. And I feel privileged that we've recorded this a few days before you leave us. I don't know.
Well, yeah, man, it was a good